On today's show, I am building my Mets dream team for the 2024 season.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X, Finkelstein Ryan. Also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Building out a dream team for the New York Mets next season. I think this free agent period is one of the more interesting ones that we've had in recent memory because the class is just so thin and it's not even necessarily top heavy. There's a couple names, of course, that are atop the list, and we'll be going through them on the show today, but it's really hard to just rebuild your team overnight this offseason. But what we're going to do today is try to accomplish just that. And if you're building out a dream team, wouldn't you think that the first thing you would do is grab the best possible player and put them on the roster? And this offseason, the best player in baseball is available in free agency, and the Mets have an owner that can sign anyone, Shohei Ohtani. Should the Mets go all in on him? Well, if you've been listening to this show for this offseason, you probably know my take on this one. Of course, the Mets sign Ohtani, I will be all in. I'm not an idiot. But I think there's a couple of other offseason targets that are more exciting. That's why I'm sort of out on Shohei Ohtani, and I am all in on Yamamoto. That's what I want. I want Yamamoto. Two players in one. We've heard that before. That's Shohei Ohtani. He's literally two players in one. These are the two players. This is the dragon that you can combine together. These two guys who can give you everything that Ohtani could in the peak scenario, but it's actually two players. And I think they would give you so much more value because you know what? I like Yoshinobu Yamamoto, the pitcher, a lot more than Shohei Ohtani, the pitcher. He's younger. He's not coming off his second Tommy John surgery. He's 25 years old coming over and just seems like the absolute best pitcher in this free agent class. Apologies to Aaron Nola, who just got his deal, and to Blake Snell, who just won his second Cy Young. If you can get a 25-year-old ace, that's the top free agent starting pitcher. And then there's Juan Soto, who might not be the hitter that Shohei Ohtani is, but he's not trying to pitch. He's more durable, so I feel better about that aspect of it. And the guy is just a walking 400 OPP every single year. He is going to get on base over 40% of the time every season. So you have that, and it's just the floor makes me so comfortable and cozy to think about a future Mets team that's built up of Francisco Lindor, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Juan Soto, hopefully Pete Alonso, but we'll cross that bridge next offseason. Like, if you just think about how this team could evolve, the prospects that would filter in, it just makes sense. Now, give me either of them, and I'm on cloud nine for the Mets offseason. If they sign Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Juan Soto gets traded to the Yankees, okay, sure. It's unfortunate to see Soto not in a Mets uniform, but hey, maybe the Yankees don't get that deal done and you have another crack at it next offseason. But if they pull off either deal, if they make the trade for Juan Soto or they sign Yoshinobu Yamamoto, it would be such a success for David Stearns in this front office. But if they get both, that's the dream. And for those of you who are wondering, well, how much would that cost? I've been discussing these two guys in particular all offseason. So I'll point you to the November 3rd episode of Locked On Mets, which was titled, Mets Can't Mess This Up, Get Juan Soto at All Costs. I don't remember entirely if I broke down the contract, but I definitely broke down the prospects that it would take to acquire him. And I really went into how far down I'd be willing to go, or how all in I'd be willing to see the Mets go to get this guy when it comes to top prospect capital. For Yamamoto, I've done many shows on him this offseason, but I did one on October 24th. Will Kodai Senga recruit Yoshinobu Yamamoto to the Mets, where I did project a contract, and it might have been on the low end. I also wrote an article for justbaseball.com about it as well. If you look up contract prediction Yoshinobu Yamamoto, you'll find my article. And I sort of broke down the comparison of him and Kodai Senga, what I thought he would get. Who knows? But this is about building out a dream. And to me, the dream is Yoshinobu Yamamoto is headlining the rotation, and Juan Soto is the best bat anchoring your lineup. And then what does that look like? Well, if you just make those two additions, your rotation is Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Kodai Senga, Jose Quintana. It's a really good 1 through 3. There's obviously some weakness on the back end. Then you're looking at Tyler McGill, Joe Lucchesi, Jose Budo. That's why we have 2 more segments today, because we're going to try to fill that out. The lineup. This is where the Juan Soto thing just gets me so excited, because I think if they made the Juan Soto trade, they don't have to add another position player. Yes, the roster is a little bit ill-fitting, but there's so much talent that I'm just willing to bet on this team. Brandon Nimmo, your starting center fielder, batting leadoff. Francisco Lindor at shortstop, batting second. Juan Soto anchoring your lineup, playing left field, batting third. Pete Alonso. Man, Soto Alonso. Remember, this guy gets on base at a 400 clip, and Pete Alonso in a contract year might hit 50 bombs. I mean, come on. You might be starting 2-0 most games. All right, that's amazing. 1 through 4. Jeff McNeil batting fifth, playing second. Francisco Alvarez catching. Either Brett Beatty or Ronnie Mauricio starting at third, whoever wins that job. Mark Vientos being the DH. Starling Marte in right field, batting ninth. Your bench would have DJ Stewart if he's not just taking Marte's job, if Marte's hurt in right field. Ronnie Mauricio is who I'm projecting on the bench with him. That's if Beatty can win the job. Or, Mauricio could be the DH. Vientos could be a right-handed power bat off the bench. Narvaez, and then, I don't know, Zach Short, who cares? We'll get to that more in the final segment, who that last player could be. But to me, if you just think about that 1 through 9, the length of that lineup, yes, you're counting on some of those players from this year that didn't perform to step up again. But, if McNeil and Marte bounce back, if you get a breakout from some of the kids, and then you still have that 1 through, again, the 1 through 4, Nimmo, Lindor, Soto, Alonso, and then the top 3 in the rotation, Yamamoto, Senga, Quintana. That's a team that could come together under a new manager and shock the world. So that right there is the core of my dream team. It's Yama Soto. That's it. Now, how you build out the roster beyond that, how do you get more pitching? Because this team is still certainly thin. We still haven't even addressed the bullpen. That's what we're going to get into more in the next segment. Before we do, though, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you're thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options from the spread, the player props, to over-unders, and more. And you got a lot of sports you can bet on. There's the NFL, there's college football, the NBA season in full swing. So what I like to do is I like to look at my favorite team, the Miami Heat, and if I'm watching a game that night, I want to just increase my rooting interest more. So maybe I'm betting on Duncan Robinson over-unders on threes and Bam Adebayo over-unders on rebound and the Heat winning the game. If you're a Knicks fan, you could do the same thing with Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson. There's so many ways that you can get in on the action. And remember, $5 money line bet. You win that, you get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season or the NBA season. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Now, before we get back to building out our Mets team around Yamamoto, I want to give a shout out to our Locked On Mets insiders, because they gave me the idea for this show. Last week, I sent out a text to the insiders and said, hey, what do you want to see me cover on the show coming up here? And somebody sent in, I would love to hear what your Mets dream team is. Now you got what today's show ended up being. So thank you to them. If you want to become a Locked On Mets insider, be inside the scoop of everything going on with the Mets, with the show, getting those type of text messages, you can find the link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/lockedonmets. Now, this is a dream team episode, right? So I shouldn't have to worry about money, but I also want to, make this somewhat realistic. And I do think while the chances of the Mets actually pulling off both of those transactions is slim just by the nature of the market that each of them has. Juan Soto, there's a lot of teams in on him in the trade market. And a lot of those same teams are looking at Yamamoto in free agency. So it would take a really heroic effort by David Stearns to pull all that off. And if he does, I want to make you understand a little bit how hard it would be then to build out a team beyond that, just with the amount of money that is already spent on this roster and then would be added to it by taking on Juan Soto's contract, which would be $27 million is his projection through Spot Track through his final year of arbitration. And then you have Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who's going to at least make 25. And some people are all of a sudden projecting $30 million per season. You're adding that to a Mets luxury tax payroll right now, which is over $260 million. It can add up quick. And last year, their luxury tax was, I think, $357 million, according to Spot Track. So theoretically, you have close to $100 million to spend. But basically, I would look at those two additions with where the Mets are at and say, okay, you might have $40 million if this was a realistic building out of your roster. And with that, Ronaldo Lopez just signed. So one of my top relief targets is off the board. And of course, he signs with the Braves, which is awful. 3-year, $30 million deal. They're going to try to make him start too, which was a very interesting wrinkle that came out after the deal was reported. But the point being, Lopez got $10 million per. Jordan Hicks is a reliever. I would love to see the Mets sign. Probably, I think the top target left on the board that's realistic because I don't see them getting Josh Hader. Well, if Lopez got $10 million per and Hicks is 3 years younger, I believe he's 27. I think Lopez is 30, and he is coming off maybe a slightly better season, but you just look at his stuff and the fact that he's throwing 102 mile per hour sinkers, and it's just disgusting stuff that I feel like he's going to get maybe overpaid in this market with the lack of pitching that's available. He might make $15 million per. It'd be a ton, but at this point, it wouldn't shock me. So you're armed with that information on the bullpen side. And then Lance Lynn signs today as well. Goes back to the Cardinals, a 1-year, $10 million deal. That's all in innings, right? This is a guy that, if nothing else, is still going to strike out some batters and is going to pitch a lot of innings. He gets $10 million for that. That makes me question, even that tier B, tier C starter, how much money they're making. Because Lance Lynn, you can't even call him a tier B starter. If the year he had, he's more like a tier D. But because of the innings, I get that he's respected more than that. This is a return to where he started his career. Makes a lot of sense. But I'm looking at the starting pitching market, and I'm saying, all right, how much is Seth Lugo really going to make? What's Lucas Giolito getting? So to try to build this out, and if you're looking at maybe $40 million to play with, and you're trying to add 4 pitchers, maybe 1 starter to 3 arms in your pen, ooh, that's tough. It's really tough. And that's why the Mets are going to be expensive. No matter what happens this offseason, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they ended up spending more money in their payroll this year with all the dead money that's on the books than they did last year. And they still had some dead money on the books last year. So what players would fit under that umbrella, that $40 million? I look at 2 starting pitchers that to me make sense. Maybe 3. Wade Miley will throw in there. I wouldn't love it. I'd be okay with it, but I'd be concerned because the last 4 seasons, it's sort of been every other year this guy gets hurt, and he was relatively healthy last year. So I just wonder the durability there. But he turned down a $10 million mutual option, so he thinks he's going to get more or multiple years. So that's pretty interesting. The 2 guys I'm really looking at is Seth Lugo and Nick Martinez. And I think they deserve a full show along with Michael Wacha, all of those starting pitchers that hit the market from the Padres, not including Blake Snell, which is a whole other conversation. But Martinez, last year he made $10 million. He hit $1 million in incentives. Lugo made $7.5 million. He turned down a $7.5 million player option. I think those guys you can probably get. I look at the Jose Quintana contract from last year, 2 years, $26 million. You might be able to get those guys. Martinez was a swing man. He had a 2.32 ERA in 9 starts and then had 54 appearances out of the pen, where he pitched to an ERA just over 4. Lugo was out of the rotation all year, and he had a 3.57 ERA. It was really good. So I like reuniting with Seth Lugo. Now, for the bullpen, David Robertson, Brent Suter, and Joe Kelly. I did a whole episode on this last week on the relief pitchers the Mets should go after. So you could get more of my thoughts at length on it there. But briefly, I would say David Robertson makes a lot of sense to come back to the Mets. He pitched really well in a Mets uniform. I don't worry at all about what happened in Miami. He went to a completely new clubhouse, which is not easy. And didn't seem happy about getting traded again at the deadline. So I feel like if you were able to mend those fences and get him to come back, and he was in a setup role, I think he would do very well. Joe Kelly is just discount bin Jordan Hicks. He doesn't throw quite as hard, but still does throw gas. I just don't think he's going to make as much money. So if you're trying to get this team under that $40 million umbrella, that's one of the areas where you're cutting some costs. And then Brent Suter. I've talked about him a bunch. Just a dependable reliever who is going to get innings in your bullpen and probably pitch to a sub 3.5 ERA, somewhere between a 3 and a 3.6, probably, like somewhere in there. He's going to be just solid. So that would be my trio of relievers. You add a Seth Lugo or a Nick Martinez, and you roll with that. But the thing about everything I just broke down is this is dream team, right? So if we're talking the dream team, well, maybe Steve Cohen is looking at his New York Mets and saying, I got Yamamoto, I got Soto in this scenario. I'm right there ready to win. We're going to reset the books a lot next season with all the dead money coming off and everything else. Let's push the chips in even further. And let's see if we can have the first ever $400 million payroll. Let's get absolutely crazy. And with that, I will get to the final dream scenario in the next segment here about if money really becomes no object. And this is just Steve Cohen flipping the bird to every other owner and saying, I want this World Series. I got the executive I wanted. We swung 2 incredible deals. Let's just keep going, foot on that gas pedal. What does that look like? We'll get to that next. First, though, another word from our sponsors. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for your 24/7 coverage of all the top stories in sports with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, let's get back to the Yoshinobu, Yamamoto, Juan Soto dream team that's going to add some more high-priced players. Let's get after it. All right, who we got? Instead of Joe Kelly, I mentioned it, it's Jordan Hicks, okay? You instead get the, at this point, second best reliever left on the market outside of Josh Hader, who might get an obscene amount of money, but who cares? This is Steve Cohen's team. And then the move I haven't really addressed yet, but I have talked about on previous podcasts, you can find an episode on him, Tyler Glasnow. Trading for Tyler Glasnow. It's going to cost $25 million next season. The Rays aren't going to pay for that. They're going to trade him. Mets get into the mix, and they swing that deal as well. So we're looking at a team that, with those two additions, if you swap out Lugo or Martinez for Tyler Glasnow, and you swap out Joe Kelly for Jordan Hicks, you're probably adding $20 million to an already absurd payroll. And you know what? Since it's already there, let's get nuts. Sign Joe Kelly too. Let's just really beef up the bullpen. In that dream team scenario, it's Yamamoto, Senga, Glasnow, Quintana. So that's a really good 4. I mean, yeah, we could say, hey, sign Seth Lugo too, but now we're just getting greedy. I really do believe that between Tyler McGill, Joey Lucchesi, and Jose Budo, those guys can cover the 5th starter spot. Now, trying to add 2 starting pitchers in this free agent class is going to be tough, but maybe that's where you have to go to the trade market and get a guy like Glasnow. So again, that's a pretty good 1 through 4. I mean, you're 1 through 3. If you get into the playoffs and these guys are healthy and you have Yamamoto, Senga, and Glasnow, I mean, come on. And Quintana as your 4, I'd be good with that as well. The bullpen, Edwin Diaz, Jordan Hicks, David Robertson, Brooks Raley. You threw in Joe Kelly at the end because why not? Brent Suter, Drew Smith becomes your 7th reliever in that pen. And then, like Phil Bickford. And then the starting lineup is, as we already said before, Nimmo, Lindor, Soto, Alonso, McNeil, Alvarez, Beatty, Vientos, Marte, DJ Stewart, Ronnie Mauricio on the bench, Narvaez. The team needs a backup center fielder. And also, you could probably use one more bat. So if we're staying on the dream team, you go out and you sign Justin Turner as well. Give yourself a legitimate DH. Maybe you trade Mark Vientos in one of those deals, whether it's the Juan Soto deal or the Glasnow trade as that throw-in piece. And yeah, you roll with Turner as your DH, gives you a little bit of insurance from Beatty and Mauricio at third. Again, I've talked about Turner on past podcasts. You can find those in your episode library as well. I think it is a really good fit when I broke down the free agents who I thought the Mets should reunite with. I talked about a lot of them in this show again today. It's Justin Turner, David Robertson, Seth Lugo. So I think Justin Turner does fit this team a lot. That would add another significant salary or you're really pushing 400. Maybe you get even beyond that. Let's see how nuts you can do. Adam Duvall or Michael Taylor are guys I think would be good final pieces on the Mets if they got Juan Soto. If you put Justin Turner to the side and you believed in Mauricio and Beatty and Vientos, getting a 4th outfielder has some upside. Like Duvall, he could play some center field. You could have him as your DH. Really good high-end potential. He just gets hurt like every year, so that'd be the problem there. Michael Taylor is just a really high floor 4th outfielder. He's probably going to get a chance to start in this free agent class, I think. But, if you could find a way to get him to sign a board, he'd be a really good backup center fielder. If we're going to close the show, though, getting back to the initial dream, which was just simply having Yamamoto and Soto, if you get those 2 guys and then you're trying to build a realistic team around them, we're going to, swipe away all of that dream stuff with Glasnow and Hicks, and we get back to the bullpen that has Joe Kelly instead of Hicks and not both. And you get back to a rotation that has Lugo or Martinez sitting in that 4th spot, and you're hoping that one of them can come through in a big way, along with all the other depth arms that you have. I still think there'd be enough there. There'd be enough there in the rotation. There'd be enough there in the bullpen. And then I think the big question would be, how would you manage center field? Because you'd basically just have Brandon Nimmo on the roster if your outfielders were Nimmo, Soto, Marte, Stewart. But then there's Jeff McNeil. And I actually think that Jeff McNeil could be your backup center fielder in a scenario like this one or any other one, right? If you look at this free agent class and it doesn't make sense because Harrison Bader, Kevin Kiermaier, Michael Taylor are all going to get paid too much because teams just need center fielders, and you already have Nimmo in place, I honestly do think that Jeff McNeil can really serve as this team's 4th outfielder and their starting second baseman. He's done it in the corners. I feel like as long as Nimmo stayed healthy, which is the big if, like McNeil could survive. And then having Drew Gilbert as a potential where, hey, if Nimmo went down and you just needed somebody, him, Jet Williams, like to have those high athleticism spark plug types that in a worst case scenario you could call on. I think it actually makes the Mets a little better suited in center field than it may seem on paper, which is just another tangent that I had here as I was looking at the Juan Soto type Mets team, because again, if they were to swing that trade, I don't necessarily see them doing anything else on the position player front. Just like if they sign Yoshinobu Yamamoto, it's going to be hard to do another thing on the free agent starting pitching market. There's so many teams competing for these starters that if you're, Seth Lugo's agent, you're holding out, and all of a sudden you might be sitting in this incredible position where there's a bidding war ensuing for Seth Lugo, where the guy might make $15, $16 million per season, which I wouldn't call likely at this juncture, but I don't know how this free agent market's going to go here. I mean, seriously, like the Yankees, they need pitching. The Cardinals, they signed Lance Lynn. They still need pitching. The Red Sox, if they wanted to compete, they need pitching. The Phillies are apparently not done even after re-signing Nola. The Diamondbacks just went to the World Series. They still need pitching. The Rangers don't really need pitching, but they might just get some anyway because, why not? The Astros theoretically could use some more proven pitching, although they have a lot of guys coming back from injury potentially that can fill that out. And that's just off the top of my head. The Dodgers, they need pitching. So the trade market is going to be really fascinating because I think there's going to be a lot of deals done with certain teams that are just going to see the writing on the wall the same way the Mets did at the deadline and the White Sox did, and are just going to say, we're going to keep being sellers. I think the White Sox are one of them. They just got 5 players for a relief pitcher this offseason, already making a trade. It's going to be very interesting to see how the Brewers go about this. Are the Brewers going to be a big-time seller after Woodruff went down and Counsell left and Burns and Adames set to hit free agency? They're a team that could sell. So there's a lot that are interesting. If the Angels lose Ohtani, do they go all in on a sell? The Guardians, they might trade Shane Bieber and potentially some relievers if they wanted to just capitalize on the market. It's going to be pretty fascinating. But if I had my dream, this is my dream team, it just comes down to those 2 players. It's Yamamoto. I want Yoshinobu Yamamoto to be headlining the Mets rotation more than anything. And I want Juan Soto in that Mets lineup. Maybe the best course of action is to sign Yamamoto now and just hope that Scott Boras can push Soto through to free agency. And then best of both worlds, you keep your prospects too. In 2025 is where the Yamamoto dream becomes a reality. Till then, I'll just keep hoping for it. And I'm sure you guys will as well. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Trying to make a push 10,000 subs. So appreciate all of you who hit that subscribe. And of course, if you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, you can find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. And check out Locked On's first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories in sports with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel.